What's up, everybody? Thanks for tuning into the Crash Bang Boom podcast. Got a killer drummer and one of my absolute favorites from the 90s rock scene, in Zach Barocas of Jawbox, Bells, and more. And as a guy who had both an interesting approach to grooves and a definitive tone on the instrument, there was no shortage of awesomeness to talk about. Not the least of which is the string of upcoming Jawbox reunion shows, the process of revisiting music and parts written some 20 years prior, some of the songs that have become favorites in revisiting them, plus some of our favorite drummers of the 90s, our mutual fascination with Keith Moon, and a whole lot more. Shout out to my sponsor, New Orleans Record Press. If you're looking at releasing vinyl, go on over to NewOrleansRecordPress.com to check out the packaging, mastering, electroplating, lacquer cutting options, as well as a real-time quote generator. And they print both 12 and 7-inch records in both 150 and 180 gram variants, and no shortage of ridiculously beautiful vinyl coloring options. Need assistance with design or have further questions? Give them a holler, and that's NewOrleansRecordPress.com. Crash Bang Boom podcast is now available on Google Play, as well as my SoundCloud, iTunes podcast, as well as my YouTube page, Stitcher, and more. Check out my Instagram and Facebook pages and give them a like, a subscription, or a glowing review. It'd be greatly appreciated. So without further ado, here we go. The bad mamma jamma that is Zach Barocas, Jawbox, Bells, and all that. Crash Bang Boom.
Crowds go mad with joy.
Zach Barocas, what's happening, man? How you doing?
I'm well, and thanks for having me.
Yeah, good to see you, man. I'm a fan of your playing, the bands that you've been in, your general approach to drumming and the whole thing, so it'll be fun to talk to you about it.
Thanks.
And we're officially setting a record for the earliest interview that I've ever done out of 125 interviews, so congratulations.
I get up around 5.
Are you serious?
Yeah.
You're like a fucking rooster, man. How is this possible?
It's kind of how it shook out. Both my wife and I get up early.
Wow.
Well, it's an undisturbed time. Like there's no one's gonna, whatever we're doing, like it will not be intruded upon.
Right.
It's that early.
What time are you going to bed if you're waking up at 5?
Well, I mean, it's sometimes at like 9.
Right.
You know.
Yeah.
But I don't worry about it too much.
Yeah.
Frankly, I mean, I don't have a lifestyle where I'm generally missing much at night,
right.
anymore. So
yeah, not going out partying in the clubs
very
every 7 nights a week.
I can't even say it's infrequent. I would say it never happens. Never happens.
Never happens. Yeah. Right on, man. Well, it'll be fun talking to you about this upcoming Jawbox reunion, and I definitely have some questions about revisiting your former self, sure, in a sense. But what's been going on, man? Last time I saw you, one of our band played with your band, Bells, and it's interesting. I was just thinking about it because I have 2 drum sets in New York, and I was thinking about selling one, and I played that Vistalite kit on that gig, and I was telling you, yeah, man, I'm thinking about selling this kit, and you're like, dude, don't sell that kit. Are you crazy? Don't sell that kit.
Right.
And I was like, really? And you're like, yeah, man. Yeah. And so to this day, I still have it. And I was really, really, really planning to sell it.
Sure.
And I'm glad I didn't sell it.
Well, I think that, like, particularly living in New York, there's always the storage issue.
Right.
And there's a tendency to look at an object or a set of objects and kind of ruminate on what else might go there.
Yes.
Wherever they're sitting.
Yeah.
I'm down to I only have 1 kit in New York right now because I took another one down to Jay's for Jawbox practice, and he has another one of mine. My first real drum set is a house kit at his studio.
Wow.
So that's the 69 Ludwigs I got with my bar mitzvah money.
That's hilarious.
And then
is that the wood colored one that you play in Jawbox? I saw you play with Bells.
That's the one I just took down there.
Okay, so that one's at that rehearsal space.
And then I can't even remember what the name of the line is, some Ludwig budget line. But I picked that up, and I played that in Bells for a while.
Yeah.
And I did the Kimura, I don't know if you know that record or not. That was the thing. Me and Jay did a record with Jonah Matranga, who sang in a band called Far.
Okay.
And I used that kit on that session. It was a little 5-piece kit.
Yeah.
And that one I sold.
Okay.
Because I figured I had 2 and one out of town. And, a 4th seemed like a lot.
Yeah.
And a friend of mine who had just started playing again didn't have any drums.
Right.
So I figured, I let that go to him.
Right on.
But I think they're not. What do you get for a kit? Like, suppose you sell, you get lucky, you get $1,500 for a drum set or $2,000. For a clean Vista Lite kit, seems like it could get a lot. But like, I mean, you might contribute that to your son's college fund or something. But really, like, it's going to go to something stupid, like another computer,
right,
or a vacation that you might already have money to go do,
right,
or something, and you're never going to have those drums again. And you're certainly not going to find like another clean Vista Lite kit, so you're kind of just out of business on it.
Yeah, yeah.
And I think this stuff is, I think there's a kind of talismanic value to having your stuff around. It's like having a lot of books or your records or whatever. Some people walk into an apartment, see a lot of books and think, wow, that's, what an albatross to have to move those things. Or did you really read all these things or whatever?
I certainly think the latter.
Or it's like, well, that's everything I've learned in the last 25 years.
Yeah.
Or more. So I don't, I just as soon keep that stuff close.
Do you, in this day and age of rapid dissemination of information and internet and everything else, do you still have the attention span to read physical books?
Well, yes, although I quit smoking cigarettes like 4 years ago.
Oh. How long did you smoke?
30 whatever years.
Wow.
I was a lifer.
No shit.
Yeah, I started smoking when I was like 12 or 13.
Wow.
And what I learned was I only learned this about 6 months ago. I'm one of my generation who's diagnosed with ADD as an adult.
Right.
And it appears that I treated that largely with nicotine.
Huh.
Or with smoking, with having that routine.
Sure.
I was able to focus more. So which is a long way of saying yes, but there's this middle few years where that was sort of untreated, and I wasn't smoking, and I went bananas.
Yeah.
Like I couldn't keep track of anything.
Wow.
And it was a real drag.
Yeah.
And it was in that time too is when Bells sort of went on hiatus because Chris Ernst, one of our guitar players, moved to Baltimore.
Yeah.
So I didn't have that.
Yeah.
And I'd quit my job, and it was a hairy couple of years. But as soon as I started getting treated for this, it's like I'm back on my feet. You know, it's interesting. I would have never thought. It was suggested to me a few years ago that I might have ADD.
Yeah.
And I summarily said, thank you for your time, and, turned on my heel and split.
Right.
I don't know why I was so insulted by that. I mean, it's ridiculous,
I think most drummers have it, to be honest.
I think so. Well, and I think that there's a lot of people who I would say between 40 and 50, roughly now, there was no one got diagnosed with this when we were kids.
Yeah.
It just didn't come up.
I'm pretty sure I did get diagnosed with it, but my dad, who was a psychologist, I don't think wanted to let me know that I was diagnosed with anything.
Sure.
So
My dad was a psychologist.
Oh, really? Was he?
Yeah. He taught clinical psychology at George Mason University in Virginia.
Oh, wow.
He's since retired, but yeah.
Yeah. My dad retired from it and then just started renovating houses. He was like, I can't deal with people's fucking emotions anymore and trying to fix people.
Right.
He was done with fixing people. He said, I'll fix houses. I can fix that.
Yeah.
Yeah. So that's his route. That's wild. I didn't know that about your dad.
Yeah.
That's interesting.
But I think that does kind of, I think a lot of stuff that I got into, like I'm certain that as you're suggesting, I think playing drums was one way to deal with that.
Yes.
So was, I've been sober for about 10 and a half years now, but drinking was certainly something over which I seem to have no control.
Yeah.
But I think part of what I liked about it was that it just kind of stops everything dead.
Yeah.
Including me. So I gave that up. But I think a lot of my attitudes about music and about drumming have to do with hearing. Not like I can't play a beat and just show you the kick drum pattern. You
Just
know, like I
isolate
can play
that
the whole thing for
right,
you,
this is
or
it.
I can play nothing for you.
Yeah.
And I think my interest in a lot of what beats do, as opposed to what, you know, I play beats. I'm not a very limber drummer. I'm not a very flexible drummer. I have fantasies about being in groups that don't play rock music.
Right.
But a lot of the blame there really has to be, you know, it goes to me, because I play too loud to play with anything except amplified guitars, right? So the saga is like this idea of how do I play these beats, because I can focus on them. And they're repeatable.
Well, that's the interesting thing about you saying the ADD thing, because part of your drumming style that I've always noticed, there was with the Jawbox stuff and the bells, you have a way of, you're a pretty linear player, and they do repeat, and I think that takes a particular focus. So it's interesting that in having ADD, that was the moment where you could have sort of a hyper focus and a recall to repeat that stuff.
I've come to see that. In the last 6 months or so. I mean, I think I knew that anyway. Like my preference has always been for either repeating patterns or like Art Ensemble of Chicago, like no pattern.
Going for it, yeah.
And it, I think from the standpoint of drumming, a lot of the normal, or a lot of the usual normal, who knows what that means, but a lot of the usual kind of markers of what's good drumming, you know, playing fast. That's always been one. So it could be like Max Roach fast, or it could be Minor Threat fast.
Yeah.
But either way, that's one thing. You know, I've never been particularly fast.
Yeah.
I'm not particularly handy with fills.
Yeah.
But I think finding a voice in this idea of only playing beats, and then from that, you know, you can go, if all you play is beats, if all one plays is beats rather, like, it almost doesn't matter what you're hitting. Meaning within your kit, you don't need to say, well, I've been on my snare for this long, now I got to get over to my toms, or now I got to get over here. Yeah. Just sort of hit what you want.
Yeah. But it is interesting because in addition to having the aforementioned sort of beat style, or repeating style, so to speak, you also tonally had a pretty unique voice, especially within rock. You know, once I heard Jawbox, everybody was kind of going to like big deadened drums, and then here you come and you're playing smaller high tuned drums, almost as if it was jazz or something, but hitting with rock aggression.
Well, I think that's, again, that some of that comes out of, you know, what I've come to understand. I mean, in my 20s, who knows what I was thinking exactly. But I was not going to stand out by virtue of doing things that other people were doing. There were. I think I came up at a time when, and among a group of musicians and bands, there were a lot of really good drummers.
Dude, the 90s were crazy.
It was and coming out of the, I don't know, even coming out of the 80s, like Pete Moffett. Who you know, of course, was playing with Jay in Government Issue, and John McIntyre was in Bastro. I met John Herndon when he was playing in Poster Children. Brendan with Fugazi.
Yeah, it's awesome.
Like these are drummers who Orestes Morphine, who was playing with Walt Mink at the time, but had been in Bitch Magnet prior to that. These were like world-class drummers playing to 7 people.
Right.
You know what I mean?
Yeah.
And I think knowing these players, you know, who was going to be as fat, who was going to rock as hard as Pete?
Yeah.
You know, who was going to get as, like, Brendan always had a cool kind of, there's a kind of inner swing to his playing.
Yeah,
you know, on those Fugazi records.
Yeah.
McIntyre, of course, was from another planet.
Yeah.
You know?
John Stainer, a helmet affected so many people.
He's another guy I met back then. Yeah.
Yeah. It was crazy. I mean, like in Louisiana, and I know just from his influence was so broad and so omnipresent that every drummer that I was seeing in the 90s was quoting him, whether they were realizing it or not.
I think I ended up doing it because I joined Jawbox.
Yeah.
And they had. They did that tour with Helmet, and when the tour was over, Page had some songs where he sang instead of shouting at people, and that was what Jay did to him. And Jay had some tunes that were real, like the stuff on Novelty. Like suddenly Jawbox was heavy, which they had never particularly been heavy. You know.
Yeah.
Oh no, I think Helmet's that's an interesting. I don't know that I've ever really listened to Helmet.
Really?
Well,
I was obsessed.
I didn't. I didn't listen to a lot of my contemporaries except that I knew them.
Right.
I mean, they're obviously like I listen to Shudder to Think and I listen to Fugazi. They're Jawbox are why I moved to DC.
Right.
But I think once I started playing in the band, I didn't want to sound like anybody else.
Yeah.
And this is sort of what brought me to Small Shells. I think, like originally, I was having some trouble in my some tendonitis, and was thinking about McIntyre and my sense of what jazz guys did. Mm-hmm. Well, I think I was wrong about this, but so I lowered everything and flattened it out.
Yep.
And then it got kind of strange because there were sort of three heights. There was like my hi-hat and rack tom height, my snare and floor tom height, and then all cymbals were the same height.
Right.
That didn't quite work out because you can't have everything. Eventually something has to not whack something else while it's moving.
Right.
But I think once I got that worked out, somehow having everything flat, it seemed logical then to make everything smaller.
Yeah.
Because you could get it closer. And also it would introduce this other, one of the problems of playing in a band, as you know, with two Marshalls and a bass rig, is everything's fighting for generally the same register.
Yeah.
But if you're playing a 10-inch rack tom, that's going to cut through like a snare. Yeah. And in my case, like a 12-inch snare. Right. And then having a 12-inch floor tom, the relative tones are the same. Whereas someone else might be playing a 14 and a 12 and a 14, or a 14 and a 13 and a 16. A 12 and a 10 and a 12 work together the same way. Yeah. It's just everything's a higher pitch. Right. And looking back on it now, like I have my 10-inch tom up right now on my practice kit in Baltimore, and I almost can't play it. Really? It's so small.
It's a really small target. Yeah.
In Bells, I think I played it for a little while, but once I went over to the 5-piece kit, even if I went down to 4, I kept the 12-inch tom up. Yeah. The 10 is just it's so small, man.
Oh, dude, tell me about it. I went to 13 from 12 for my primary rack tom and a 4-piece kit. And now when I go back to a 12 even, I'm like, this thing is so small. A 10 that's a whole nother thing.
It doesn't, I don't understand. I bought the kit from Adam Wade, who bought it when he was in Jawbox.
Oh, wow.
So he left to join Shudder to Think. Yeah. And when they signed to Epic, he bought a new kit and sold us his old kit. So Jawbox actually bought that kit twice.
Oh, that's hilarious.
But it was a 10, a 12, and a 14.
Yeah.
And he played the 12 and the 14. And the kick is a 20 by 18. Right. Which is, I guess you can still buy them. They don't seem to be on the market much anymore except from DW. Right. They still like those deep kicks. But right. I just bought my new kit that I'm waiting for is a 20 by 4 or 20 by 14 kick. And then 8 by 12 and 14 by 14. Yeah. We'll see how that goes.
That's cool.
Yeah.
I'm a fan of more narrow depths in bass drums. That's what I started off playing. And then in marching band, hearing those shallower drums and everything, that's always kind of what resonated with me. And then like hearing John Bonham, and it's just 70s, 60s, 70s drums. Those were shallower drums and more tonal. And
a couple years ago, my father actually bought me a drum kit, which seemed a little strange this late in life, but there you go. And
Thanks, Dad.
It's a beautiful kit. It's a Champagne Sparkle Classic Maple.
Awesome.
Which they discontinued Champagne Sparkle.
That's one of my all-time favorites.
When I ordered my new kit, I was like Champagne Sparkle because I figured I could just commingle all these Classic Maple drums and build Frankenstein kits that would match. Right. And they don't offer that finish anymore. Wow. Because I guess something in it got too expensive.
Interesting.
So this is before all that. I bought it's a 9 by 13, 16 by 16, and a 24 by 14.
Awesome.
Which Darren Zentek, I don't know if you know Darren or not.
I'm a fan of his playing.
So Darren's sort of my chief. He's my real rabbi on this stuff. Yeah. Because I don't know that much about gear. Yeah. And he suggested that as a size because it would be. I told him I wanted a real departure. Yeah. Something like I had never done before. And he had played that kit in Office of Future Plans. Uh-huh. So I sort of knew it. And I thought, okay, let's do that. And I think it took me a year of regular practice to be comfortable with that kick drum.
Really?
Yep. And then I packed it up I played it in a band I had with Steve Shoden from Bells. We had a band called Bright Christ, was a 2-piece kind of hardcore band. And I played it there, and then I packed it up again.
Yeah.
And broke out my little 20.
Yeah.
And was playing the big toms on the 20.
Right.
But I didn't, I think the problem I felt like it seemed to me the problem with the 24 is that, again, this is probably, endemic to our generation. It was impossible to not end up playing things that felt like John Bonham beats.
Right.
And I'm not into that.
Yeah.
I have a friend in Minneapolis, a drummer named Ian Prince, who's currently in a group called Porcupine, and he's one of the finest rock drummers I've ever known.
Yeah.
Incredible power, incredible force, incredible grace. He's got one thing we don't have in common is he's very concerned with what's referred to as playing to the song.
Right.
and he's remarkable at it. Really, just a titan that most people don't know about.
Yeah.
But Ian plays a 24. I think he even has a 26.
Okay.
But he's a pretty big, strong dude, and he can get the kind of punch out of it. And a real kind of fleetness out of it that I was not able to get. Yeah. I felt like I was always underwater with that thing. Everything was big and slow.
Yeah.
And then, I played it today. Like I broke it back out, and I've been really happy with it this last month.
Yeah.
But I can't lay my tom flat because it's too high.
Right.
So I've had to make some other changes. But it's interesting to try to play beats that I wrote on a 20-inch drum on a 24-inch drum.
Right.
Yeah,
because the tonal aspect of what you're playing was so much a part of it.
Oh, and I think of a kick drum as something that's way down there.
Yeah.
And the way one establishes their space behind the kit, I think of it as being like a footrest, not a table.
Yeah.
And at 24, I sit pretty high, but
you do sit high.
That 24 is like right up there.
Right.
Yeah. And the shallowness.
Yeah.
It's like the difference between playing. I have my 12x8 was my standard snare, and then I have a 13 by 5.5, which should be like the same amount of air. Yeah. More or less, but it's a completely different character.
Sure.
The 13 sounds jazzy, like it has that kind of feel. It's very musical. Mm-hmm. Has some crack to it, but mostly it's a lot of tone. The 12 is all crack.
Right. Yeah.
Anyway.
That's quite a long-winded dimension talk of drums.
Well, why not?
Yeah, it is a drum podcast. I didn't even ask you why the drums in the first place. Were there any particular records you were obsessed with, or?
Yeah, it started earlier than that. I took trumpet lessons in 4th grade.
Okay.
And stopped practice, started skipping them, stopped going. Yeah. Didn't tell my parents.
Oh boy.
And then I skipped them with my friend Lenny Davis, and our teacher called, and mistakenly thought she had called Lenny's father, but had called mine. So at first it looked like I was going to get away with this. Because she said, your son Leonard has skipped all his lessons. My father said, I don't have a son named Leonard. And she said, oh, you must be Mr. Barocas. And he said, I am. He said, well, your son Zachary has skipped all his lessons. So my punishment was I had to take an instrument the next year. And I chose drums because it didn't have scales.
Yeah.
It was as simple as it was. And then as soon as I started playing them, I played snare for a year in the school band and then got a drum set the next year. But it was, I think like a lot of us, I found some aptitude for it.
Yeah.
Some talent, like it came easily, it seemed. up to a point, and that was it. Like I think the within certainly I had a band within a year of getting a drum set.
Yeah, same
My
here.
brother's Dungeons and Dragons buddies needed a drummer.
That's hilarious.
So I was in that, and our set list, such as it was we covered Meaty Beaty Big and Bouncy in order. Like so it was all Who songs.
Wow.
And that was it. The first kick drum pedal I broke was a Ludwig Ghost pedal, which
Yeah.
I was reminded of last week for some reason. Probably because I've been talking to Ludwig.
Yeah.
I was like, man, I had a Ghost pedal. I got to find one of those. I don't even know. They certainly don't make them anymore.
I'd have to see a picture of it. I can't even visualize it.
It was not the Speed King. It was like the
Right.
other pedal, and
Yeah.
it said Ghost on the pedal board.
Okay,
And
weird.
it was the first pedal board I ever broke, playing along with Bob O'Reilly on my headphones.
Nice. Dude, that's awesome that you grew up playing with along with and emulating Keith Moon. He's one of those.
Oh yeah,
He's such an erratic but wild player. I've talked to Dale Crover from the Melvins about
Sure.
him, and
well, there's nothing to learn from him. The way, like, you can listen to who else is like Mitch Mitchell,
Yeah.
or Bonham. I mean, these ubiquitous players that
Yeah.
we all who we all refer to. You can sit down and you can learn the Professor on the Drum Kit solo from the Live Working Man.
Yeah.
I can't remember. Is it All the World's a Stage? I can't remember what
I
the
think so,
record's
yeah,
called now. 3 LPs, as
Right.
if anyone needs that much Rush.
Yeah.
But you could learn from Pert. You could learn an attitude from Pert. He's smart. Like, that guy's a smart man.
Right.
He was not going to die drunk choking on his own vomit.
Yeah.
Good for us to have
Yeah.
an influence like that,
Yeah, yeah.
But Keith Moon was like all you could do was sit and watch
Yeah.
or listen. You didn't want to quite be like that, because by the time I had heard of him, he had already died, and he was a strange guy.
Oh,
like
he was absolutely wild.
As an 11-year-old, I found him kind of repulsive,
Really?
except that he was in the Who.
Wow.
You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
like if Pete Townsend had been the drummer, that would have been perfect.
Yeah.
Because he was a guy who I thought I wanted to be like,
Yeah.
But Keith Moon was scary. Like, he was far out. He was dangerous and threw stuff. And,
Yeah. 100%.
And
But I mean, that's also part of
that was the appeal.
Yeah, 100.
Yeah.
Well, what's brilliant about it was that wildness of his character filtered into his playing and became part of his identity as a drummer.
Well, like that he ditched a hi-hat in favor of another crash.
yeah, just wild shit. Fuck the hi-hat.
Right.
Like, who does
All
that?
I'm doing is crashing on it anyway, right? Like,
Yeah, and
Yeah.
wild fills and erratic, but from a conceptual standpoint, what I learned from him was just to be able to interject part of your personality into your playing, because he certainly had that. And
Right.
while he was a wild man, he did transfer it to his playing, and that was part of his thing. And when you hear it, the energy that he interjects into that band, you take him out of that equation, the Who is a completely different band.
Yeah.
He gave it a wildness and an energy
Yeah.
that was incredible.
well, I think because I came to them, the first Who songs I knew were the early ones.
Yeah. Like
Like
Leaving
the first-
Here and
the
stuff
first-
like that.
Like the first 2 songs I ever played with other musicians were My Generation and Can't Explain.
Wow.
So there was no, on a 3-piece kit, it was a snare, rack, kick, and I
Yeah.
had a ride.
Yeah.
I don't even think I had a hi-hat stand.
True, Keith Moon style.
Yeah, right. It was, and these guys, I mean, I was enthusiastic and available, which, I mean, they were only 14. Like,
Being
they weren't-
available will always be
it was
an
the-
asset.
That was the main. That's how drummers get in, right?
yeah,
Like, we're
right.
around.
You could suck, and if you're not a complete asshole and you make yourself available, you could probably get work.
But I think his. In any case, he was the first guy. Like, I had been a Beatles fan for a number of years.
Okay.
And I'd been a Kiss fan for a number of years.
Yeah.
But I don't think either of those things didn't quite seem like mine.
Yeah.
Whereas when I found the Who, I was just about to start misspending my adolescence. Like I was just about to go off the rails in several ways. I was becoming angry, didn't know why. And the Who was just, it was like, oh, here's a whole music that's exactly what you're talking about.
Right.
And I got hooked. And the idea that, I think, like you're talking about, the idea that there was some connection between playing recklessly and playing correctly.
Yeah.
I think that maybe that's the one lesson from Keith Moon. But I feel like, except for a couple of ideas about, never stopping your kick drum or something. There isn't a whole lot where you're like, oh, I learned this Keith Moon part.
Yeah.
I unraveled the mystery of, now when I play My Generation, I sound exactly like Keith Moon. Like, it's just not going to happen.
No.
No.
Yeah.
Whereas everybody can pull off a good times, bad times.
Right.
Eventually you can make those sounds.
Yeah.
But not Love Rain or Me.
Yeah.
It's like, and really, to his credit, like it's like Roger Daltrey. Like no one sounds like that either.
Yeah, John Entwistle's bass playing is crazy.
All those guys were just nuts.
1 second cut from the arc of a swan dive, pulled out tight to the pitch of a taut line. Good, gone, down on the hip. I'm good, gone, down on the hip. I think the shaking style, I think the shaking style.
Jawbox.
Yeah.
I was thinking about it. Special Sweetheart, I'll just abbreviate the title.
Sure.
Comes out in 94. I got my first kid in 91, which was a really crazy year for music. I talk about it all the time. One of the most, I think, when reflecting upon it years from now, we'll look back and see 91 as one of the most diverse years because in musical history. I really believe that.
Sure.
Jawbox's first record, I think, came out in 91 as well. But so I got my first kit that summer, and if I would have been in a band that just exploded, I'd have been when Sweetheart came out in 94, I would have only been playing for 3-4 years or whatever.
Sure.
And I was thinking it would be hilarious to now that I'm 42 years old, to revisit material that if that would have been me at that phase, I would have been so upset about all the things that I could have done.
Sure.
And I'd have to revisit and do it justice to do justice to parts that I feel were lesser, and I'd have to abandon all these technical advancements and all this additional stuff that I did to better myself. And then so I was like, that'd be like a drummer Twilight Zone. I would just have to constantly relive all the things that I did.
It's the drummer Groundhog Day or something. Yeah. If I understand the question in there, I had started before we even talked about getting back together.
Yeah.
I had started practicing. I didn't have a band.
Yeah.
And I'm a real pain in the neck with that, with starting bands. So I wasn't really sure where to go or what to do. And Chris was in Baltimore and Steve Shoden we're still very close, but musically we had sort of parted ways.
Right.
And so I just started making playlists of Jawbox and the Up on In and Bells. Mm-hmm. The Up on In was my band in between.
Yeah.
And then I would just play along with them. It would give me something to do for an hour other than just sit and improvise. So they weren't totally alien. At the same time, though, they felt like somebody else's playing.
Right, you're a different person.
Like it really felt, and a lot of the stuff that we worked out in Bells was much more of a bridge between some of what interests me in jazz, or Chris studied with Tony Conrad at Buffalo, went to graduate school and studied with him there, and Yusef Lateef, and came out with a lot of ideas about drones and repetition, and of course those were things I was interested in. Steve had always just been much more of a straight rocker up to that point, and kind of dove in to a lot of conversations and a lot of playing that he had never been exposed to. And I thought I was done with regular guitar playing, except there he was. All this is going on. So I'm listening to Jawbox and I'm thinking, like, who would have done this?
Yeah.
What an idiot. Or, really being very hard on myself about it.
Well, you know what? Not to interject, but one of the things that I didn't specify in that was that in me listening back to your parts, I thought of myself because I was like, you know what? I think Zach played really cool stuff on this.
Sure.
So you're lucky that in revisiting it, you have really cool parts to revisit. You know,
and good songs. Like
exactly.
I kind of after that group, after Jawbox, I really tried to stop thinking about songs.
Yeah.
Which is why I stopped playing with singers.
Right.
By and large. I mean, if a friend of mine who sings needed a drummer, I'd go do it, but for my own groups, I didn't want any singing because I think it kind of asserts itself as the emotional center of the music, and I'm not interested in that.
Yeah.
Like I'm interested in floating centers and all kinds of other stuff.
Yeah.
So in Jawbox, I think I played pretty well. I was young. I mean, I joined the band in '92, and we started writing. We had Motorist and Jackpot Plus. Those were the first two things we wrote with me in the group. And it was already different. Like it was immediately we were playing a different kind of thing than they had been with Adam.
Right.
And I think everybody was excited about that, not least because it meant we didn't have to. There wasn't too much fallout with Adam being gone. Like
Right.
I learned the songs I needed to learn.
Yeah.
And we started working on new stuff, and everybody was pretty excited about it. But I think my effort at that time, I was incredibly insecure. Like I was playing in my favorite band, and I was now all of these people. I mean, I had met them, several of them, when I lived in Rochester and booking Sunday matinees and hardcore shows and whatnot. So I knew the guys from Soulside, and I knew the guys from Swizz, and I knew Fire Party, and I knew Fugazi, and I knew Jawbox that way. But to be in the band, like I had to play as well as Adam Wade.
Yeah.
Which at the time seemed impossible, or like Jay's drummer before Adam was Pete Moffat.
Yeah.
Like how was I going to do that? You
Yeah.
know, like, so I was very concerned with, what's my contribution going to be?
Yeah.
And what I arrived at was playing really hard.
Mm-hmm.
Like I hit harder than Adam and Pete.
Right.
And I'm not sure that helped me in the long run.
Right. But that also became kind of part of your sound as well.
I think it was a very aggressive.
Yeah.
And I think because I came out of a background that was much more conventional in the sense that, like, I jammed with my friends.
Yeah.
And when I was a kid, we'd get high and sit in the basement and play Stevie Ray Vaughan's Couldn't Stand the Weather in order, or play Axis Bold as Love, like just play through a whole record that way. And then I met I lived in Virginia briefly, and I met their piano player named Kevin McKendry, who's probably simply the best player of an instrument I'll ever know.
Really? Wow.
Yeah, just a tremendous talent, and intuitive and very conscientious in his playing. But we would just, we had a 2-piece band, like, and he played, generally he played piano or organ, and I played drums, and we would jam kind of all weekend.
Right.
Because I was grounded that year from everything except band practice.
Right.
So I couldn't go anywhere except Friday afternoon. I could go home with Kevin from school. Yeah. And then my father would pick me up Sunday afternoon, which meant just playing.
Right.
So that was kind of my idea about this. And even the bands, the kind of punk bands I was in before I moved to Maryland, before I moved to D.C., a lot of jamming.
Right.
Just play something for a while and see what becomes of it. And Jawbox didn't really work that way. Like Jawbox, really, Jay wrote songs and brought them to the band.
Yeah.
And I think all of us had very different ideas once we were playing this other way.
Yeah.
So like, I don't think a song like, I don't know what, Real. I don't know.
I was just about to say,
okay.
I'm so glad you said that, because I was going to say it's one of my all-time favorite Jawbox songs.
It's become one of mine. I didn't know that until about 6 months ago.
And your playing is badass on that song.
It's a weird song, man.
It's super cool. I love what you play in
Thank
the
you.
verse.
It's
really cool.
It's a kind of beat that I was very attached to at that time.
Yeah.
There's a bunch of them on that record.
Yeah.
That all derive from Peter Gabriel's In Your Eyes. Like they're all coming from one song.
Interesting.
That I was just obsessed with.
Wow.
And had been since 1986 when I first heard it.
Really?
Oh yeah. I've probably listened to Peter Gabriel's I am not overestimating it to say I've probably listened to that record 11,000 times.
Yeah.
I did a count once.
Really?
And I listened to it at least once a day from 1986 to 1996.
Are you serious?
Yeah, on average. I mean, some days I would listen to it 5 times, and I might skip a week, but I
Dude.
never got far away from that record. And I still don't know all the lyrics on it.
What? You really just that into what's happening musically that
I
somehow
think
you didn't...
I think there's no other record that sounds like that.
Yeah.
There's no other record that that so completely bridges a gap between American musical traditions and kind of avant-garde or experimental stuff like at that time he was sharing a bass player with King Crimson, right? Tony Levin
Right.
was, and then you have like
Is it Omar Hakim playing drums on that record?
Manu Katché,
Oh, right on. Yeah.
even who I don't know that he was Manu Katché until he played on that record.
Yeah.
Like I don't know what he was doing before that,
Right.
but but his idea about how many things you could hit in a beat and still have a coherent beat.
Yeah.
So like, I mean, around that time, mid late 80s, there's a lot of drummers, I think, using their whole kit,
Right.
playing a lot of toms and who's Darren's guy? Mel Gaynor,
I don't
Simple
know.
Minds, the Breakfast Club tune.
Oh, right on. Yeah. Yeah.
Like that beat is typical of him. And Phil Collins, of course. Like there are guys getting around,
Sure.
But I had never heard anything like Manu Katché. I had never heard a song like Red Rain where I couldn't quite find the beat. Like I knew where the one was,
Yeah.
but I couldn't tell you exactly what the beat was. It all got very strange, except In Your Eyes, which song is completely direct and isn't a chain pull the way Sledgehammer is or Big Time is, where there's clearly some tongue in cheek or some effort to sound like, a Motown song or a Junior Walker song or whatever it is, like In Your Eyes, I just thought was so weird,
Yeah.
and there was so much to do. I lead left. I'm left-handed, but I play on a right-handed kit.
Right.
So
But you don't play open-handed.
no.
Yeah.
No, I would never. I think that's undignified, frankly. But what it means is that I can't move my right arm around very much.
Right.
But I can get my left arm anywhere.
Wow.
Which is where a lot of those beats come from, is
Huh.
being able to kind of scoot around leading left. And So Real was a song that was a beat I came up with, but it took, that's not a beat. You don't stumble into a beat like that.
Right.
Like it started out probably being much more of a straight, whatever the beat was at the time, the boom, da boom, da boom, da boom, or the boom, da boom, boom, da boom, boom, da boom, boom.
Right.
Probably somewhere in there, like
Yeah.
everything was.
Yeah.
But then you play it for an hour, and something else starts to happen.
Sure.
And what I found at that time was, Jay especially was very excited about trying new things.
Yeah.
And we could play them on the road. So we could road test these things, not necessarily for crowd response, but in the sense of like, how did it go? Did it go well? Real, I seem to remember Real being about half its length at one time and having a straight, like a regular beat at one time.
Yeah.
But I think a lot of the ideas about playing at that time are things that I continue to worry about.
Huh.
LSMFT, I don't know if you remember
Yeah,
that song.
it's badass.
It's a song with no ride.
Right.
There's no ride in the verse, there's no ride in the chorus, and there is no bridge. So, like, I had gotten so tired of trying to decide, like, well, should I be on my ride?
Yeah.
Or should I be on my hi-hats? Should the hi-hats be open? Like, what am I going to do? Like, well, what if I didn't do anything?
Yeah.
And that kind of stuff had never occurred to me before. What if I don't?
Yeah. Sure.
Yeah. And then of course the opposite, like what if there's supposed to be, some very simple, straight ahead punk beat, but I was listening to a lot of Neville Brothers at the time, so
I grew up watching Willie Green, their drummer.
well, so Savory is more or less that beat,
Interesting.
it's a
Yeah. It's that New Orleans club thing.
except stretched out to suit the needs of angry white kids.
Right. Yeah.
But a lot of those things, I think, particularly because of my friendship with Kevin McKendry, that pianist, he's never lived north of D.C., so he was an Allman Brothers kid,
Right.
which you could argue against that, I suppose, but it certainly made for good jamming. And I would have never heard of B.B. King or Professor Longhair, or I would have never heard of the Neville Brothers or Dr. John. Like, these were all things that for him were just music because he's
Yeah.
a blues player.
Right.
But for me were revelations because I was listening to, Bad Brains or Fugazi,
Yeah.
and then to hear Yellow Moon in particular, that record was another one that just I thought this stuff came from Mars,
Right.
you know,
Yeah.
which it might as well have.
Which is interesting too, because DC, not they have their go-go thing,
Sure,
and then New Orleans has
I got
its
there
kind of
later
right.
than that, and I think by the time I got there, the kind of racism and segregation that drives that city had kind of, I think it became like if you'd been there longer, you were hip to go-go.
Right.
But I didn't get there until 91.
Right. When you
So
moved
I
to
wasn't hip to go-go. But in any case, with regards to Sweetheart, I've come, now that I'm practicing those tunes all the time, and relearning them for our shows this summer, I won't toot my own horn about it, but I'm impressed with how insistent I was. Like those are pretty, it's pretty aggressive playing, and I wanted it to be powerful, and it's like everything that's terrible about young men rolled into these beats, which is a good place for them. Like, dating was probably a nightmare, like to date me at that time.
Yeah.
But I was probably pretty cool to play with.
Right.
Yeah.
What a revelation.
Yeah.
I don't know if you remembered another conversation that we had that night that my band played with Bells. You told me a really funny story about a Jawbox show on like one of those late night shows, and Questlove was there.
Oh, we did Fallon.
The one Phil. Would you tell that story? Because it's really hilarious.
It was we were sound checking with Savory, and for anyone who doesn't know that song, it only has one fill.
Yeah.
Like, it's just the one fill, and it's almost the Jamie's Crying fill.
Mm-hmm.
And it happened several times in the song, and we were sound checking with it, and I thought it comes in, I don't know when it comes in, 16 bars into the tune or something.
Yeah.
So I'm playing and I'm feeling it, it's going great, and I look, and across the room, I see the silhouette of Questlove's hair and, of course, his body.
Yeah.
This was before he had lost any of his weight.
Yeah.
And the minute I saw him, I clammed and threw a stick, blew the fill.
Botched the one fill.
Yeah, the one fill. And then luckily it was just a sound check, so I was able to re-perform the song properly.
Good.
But it was fun to be rattled by him.
Yeah. That is wild.
And he enjoyed it. Like, I don't know if he was a fan exactly. He'd be the right age.
Yeah.
But
yeah, for sure.
He certainly, I was perfectly happy to have him enjoy my playing. And I got my picture taken with him.
Nice.
Yeah.
That's awesome. The Savory fill is funny because I played in a band here in New York, and the previous drummer on the record plays that fill in one of the breakdowns. So I have played your fill.
Terrific.
Yes, and he did as well. In fact, after this, I'll play it for you just so we can get a laugh out of it.
No, I'd like to hear it. I was thinking of today, actually, because it's the last thing I played before I came over here. I still keep thinking there's something else to do. And some songs I can get away with that. Some songs I can change it up a little bit.
That was going to be because, it's like you want to do it justice, but also...
There's sort of nothing else to do.
Yeah.
Like I used to resent that was the song, like, insofar as we had any hits, like that was the hit.
Yeah.
And that used to drive me bananas, particularly after we did our last record, because I thought these songs are so much better.
Right. Yeah.
But that never has anything to do with anything.
Savory is a hell of a catchy song.
Well, now that I'm not a jerk, and I'm not out to, murder myself.
Yeah.
I think it's a pretty great song. Like, I'm really happy with that song,
Oh, what time does when you can reflect on things.
I'm not always sure why people, why the favor falls on that record so much more than the last record.
Uh-huh.
But whatever.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like, I got to make them both with my band.
Yeah.
And we got to buy them back
later.
So we actually own those tapes.
Oh, God. Good for y'all, man. That's amazing.
No, it took Kim, our bass player, found a lawyer somewhere. She, the guy took him like 2 years to find anyone to talk to.
Yeah, of course.
Because, of course, Atlantic was, a labyrinth back then, and
Yeah.
all those people are gone. And found the tapes. Like, we bought back the rights and got the tapes.
Wow.
For a relative fraction of what it had cost to make those records. Because no one cared anymore.
Yeah.
And then there was a few years in limbo. Like, we put them up on iTunes. Nobody knew what to do with them. And then somehow Kim and Jay, maybe Kim anyway, was talking to Discord, and that was when we reissued them.
Wow.
On Discord. So it's been a really, those records have had a really good life.
Yeah. Yeah.
Well, and the last record is probably a link to something, in the sense that I didn't have any there were like no limitations on what
on the self-titled one from '96,
on what I could play.
It's a great record, yeah.
And I think that was for me the beginning of trying to write music where the drums were on equal footing in a rock band with the other instruments.
Right.
Now, one way to approach that is to be AC/DC, where everyone's kind of thumping along in unison. Mm-hmm. And obviously that's very effective, except we weren't doing that. And on some level, right, by virtue of being a punk band in the first place, like it was awesome, but it was also the enemy, and I think what we came up with in songs like Chinese Fork Tie or His Only Trade, which we'll never play again, but there's some, Capillary Life's probably another one, like Desert Sea. Like, these were songs that clearly came, the beat was as much of the tune, the genesis of the tune, as the vocal or whatever,
right?
And I don't think most drummers get to do that, and I don't know if it's because most of us don't want to. It might not be important, which I say that with no judgment. Like,
right.
I think everybody has their own priorities behind the kit.
I think some drummers also just hear drums and not necessarily with them within the context of the larger picture with music or anything else. So
sure.
That's probably part of it, as well.
Well, we all have ideas about like musical drumming, or what we think of as musical drumming.
Yeah.
But that would include Todd Traynor, with Shellac, who, he doesn't even have a ride cymbal.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
And I'm not even sure his hi-hat's open.
Right.
You know what I mean? Like,
yeah.
But the guy, he is so singular in his voice, and that band is so much built around what he does.
Yeah.
That it's perfect.
Yeah.
My guess is someone like Todd, no matter what band he's in, that's the case. Like, you don't call Todd unless you want to build a band around Todd.
Right. Yeah. That's just the presence. Yeah, that's the way it goes.
That's if he's with you, like, you're gonna have to deal with it, so you might as well just put it front and center.
Yeah.
And I think I wanted that kind of presence.
Yeah.
And my solution was to leave Jawbox and eventually start a band where I could put myself in that position, which I think in the up on in, the three of us were all kind of disasters at that time, but we had a good band. I think by the time I got to Bells, we were all kind of in agreement on a mission, and although we went through a lot of bass players, I don't know how we kept finding such good bass players either. Frankly, right. Steve kept finding. So we'd kick a bass player out, or they'd quit or move away, and then Steve would be like, "Oh, I know someone." Right. It'd be like another great bass player. But all four of them, weren't quite as important to us as we were to each other.
Yeah,
I think is sort of how that ended up.
Mm-hmm.
But the idea that you could make this kind of, make a kind of music that was sort of transcendent, without having to rely on a single voice to carry its message all the time.
Right.
Which is the problem with singers or any kind of soloist, right?
Yeah.
Is, if you play in John Coltrane's band, everybody's waiting for John Coltrane, which is fine. Like, he can, obviously he was able to deliver that.
Yeah.
But I think there's something about bands. Tortoise is another one. Like, Tortoise doesn't, whatever you're into, they have for you. But you couldn't say, like, that's no more Jeff Parker's band than it is John Herndon's band,
mm-hmm.
Which has made it strange going back into Jawbox.
Right.
After playing in that Bells kind of environment for almost, we were 9 years.
Yeah.
To go back into like, oh, there's someone in front of me on stage, like directly in front of me.
Right.
I'm very intolerant of that, except that that's what this band is. So I really should just shut up and roll with it,
Right.
or having to take cues from a singer.
Yeah.
Like I should never have to do that again, So arrogant, but
That's funny.
It's gone well.
Yeah.
It's gone well.
One of the bands that I think was a kind of descendant of the Jawbox style and had drummers up front and very drum specific music was Shiner.
Oh, sure.
And it's interesting because you had Jay Robinson, he did that, and Burning Airlines, and then later Channels, and then with Alan Epley he had Shiner, and now Life and Times,
which is already an old band,
right?
Like they've been around now for it's over 10 years.
Yeah, for sure.
Right?
Yeah. But killer drummers, and there are even some beats. There's a beat that I believe Tim Dow plays on the Luna Divinia record of Shiner that I got to play for you. I think it's called My Life as a Housewife, but it reminds me, one of the beats in the verse reminds me of one of the Jawbox songs. So I wanted to play it for you to see if we can figure it out.
That's probably, I mean, Tim would agree, like that's entirely possible and probably true.
Yeah.
And I think Tim found in me, Matt Cameron's his guy.
Matt Cameron's my guy,
like that.
too.
So like there's after that there's really sort of nowhere else to go.
Right.
But I think what a lot of us faced at that time was like, so we have our guy, but who are we hanging out with?
Right.
Like who am I actually on the road with, or who am I comparing notes with?
Yeah.
Or who am I biting off of? And I think Tim and I found in each other a much more companionable relationship. Like I wasn't going to meet Manu Katché because I was already, but even if I had an opportunity to do that back then, I was traveling in the wrong circles to do it. Mm-hmm. He wasn't going to show up at a Stone Temple Pilots show or whatever, right? Like
right.
He was much too elegant for that.
Yeah.
And I think both Tim and I also, as opposed to Jason, who's a very different kind of drummer, write our parts. They don't change.
Right.
We come up with a part, that's the part.
Yeah.
If we need a different part, we'll write a different song. But if you want this song, this is the part for it. And I think there weren't a whole lot of people around us at that time doing that with interesting parts.
Yeah.
So I don't doubt that there were a lot of bands who played the same thing, whose drummers played the same thing every time.
Yeah.
But instead of sort of being engaged by it every time, eventually one was sort of put off by it every time.
Yeah.
Like, wow, I wish you'd shake it up a little bit.
Right, exactly.
I don't remember ever thinking, and we played a lot of shows with Shiner. I don't remember ever thinking that Tim should shake it up.
Yeah. Yeah. Yeah.
Like it was just fine where it was. And I think we were very supportive of each other in that. We talked about that a little bit when I saw him in Los Angeles last year.
Nice.
And he was talking about doing those Shiner shows and how different it really brought to bear how different Shiner became once he wasn't in the band. Like that the whole thing changed,
Yeah.
And it becomes a lot more emphasis on Alan.
Yeah.
Who, good for him because his songwriting kind of ballooned around that time, became much more sophisticated.
Starless and Egg Records, yeah. Well, speaking of reunion shows, you have some reunion shows coming up. How long are y'all going out for?
Well, we're going out and coming home a lot.
Oh, okay.
So they're
Nice.
weekends. They're
Good.
kind of consecutive weekends.
Y'all being Jawbox, I should say.
Right.
Yeah.
So we're playing. We're in Boston, here, which is to say Brooklyn, Philly, D.C., Seattle, Portland, San Francisco, Los Angeles, Dallas, Austin, Minneapolis, and Chicago.
Right on.
Yeah.
Any plans to maybe do new music down the line, or for right now is the focus?
We're taking, we're actually right now we're not taking it easy at all because we need to get our act together, literally.
Yeah.
But I think we came to this in a not very relaxed fashion.
Yeah.
Like when I talked to everybody about doing it, everybody was excited about doing it, but it's taken a little while.
Yeah.
To warm up. A couple of us hadn't really been playing very much at all.
Yeah.
Jay and I had been playing just playing it all pretty regularly.
Yeah.
And I think it's a lot of songs to learn.
Yeah.
You know, and none of us remember this the same way.
Yeah.
So I think like, how could you not remember Motorist? Yeah. That's our song.
Right.
That's an anthem of the heart or something.
Right.
You know? But you know, as it turns out, not all of us feel that way about it, you know. So
interesting.
And then some of us remember songs and they're like, oh, but man, everybody loved that song.
Yeah.
And I think that song is boring.
Right.
You know, but then as soon as we're playing it, it's not boring.
Yeah.
You know, and this has been, so I think we're both, you know, everybody's trying to find the, you know, let the rising tide lift all the ships, such as it is.
Yeah.
But it's, you know, I think by the time we're done, it's going to be almost 30 songs because some of the places we're playing 2 nights, so we don't play the same set both nights.
Awesome.
And it's been, I mean, as we were saying before, it's been interesting to play, to not feel like I'm covering myself.
Yeah.
You know, like I'm not covering Jawbox songs, like those are my songs.
Yeah.
And it took a few months, but it started to feel good. The last couple months, I feel like it clicked.
Nice.
And we're kind of owning those again.
Cool.
Instead of just trying to remember them.
Right.
You know?
Right.
Which is good because I think the people who are coming out, like they remember them. We don't need to remember them. Like we need to play them, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, I think it's going to be good. And I think in our kind of settling into that groove, we started when we got together working on new stuff, but we were not with it. Like,
yeah,
I think I was still trying to assert the kind of thing we did in Bells.
Yeah.
And this isn't the band for that. You know, it was understand. However, now that we've been playing together again, I feel like each of us is better equipped to take part in that. So I wouldn't be surprised if there's new music. I wouldn't be surprised if there's more shows. Like, I mean, we're pretty happy with what we're doing. We would have done more this summer, except Kim and Bill, their son Nick is going off to college.
Okay.
So we couldn't play in August because they got to take him to school.
Right.
Which is fine. You know, I think by the time we're done with this, it's going to be more shows than most of us have played in a long time.
Wow. Well, I'm excited to hear it, man. I mean, I'm excited y'all are back at it. It'll be a nostalgic experience for me. And
hopefully a new one, too.
Yeah, and a new one as well, right?
Yeah.
Yeah, very cool, man. Well, Zach, thanks for sitting down and talking to me, man. It's been too long. I got to catch up with you soon as well. And best of luck with the shows and
Thank you.
Whatever else you got going on. I got to come see some of these new drums you got over here, man.
Yeah, no, of course.
Yeah, we'll talk more about dimensions. Not interstellar dimensions either.
No, just the right here on Earth.
Those.
Terrestrial dimensions. Yeah.
Terrestrial dimensions. Right on, Zach. Good talking to you, man.
Thank you.
All right, everybody. Thanks for tuning in, and many thanks to Zach for hanging and talking. Definitely a good time rapping with one of my favorite players out there, and it's such an amazing approach that he has to the instrument, and such a really unique and definitive sound. So it was cool picking his brain about that. We'll catch you on the next one. Crash, bang, boom.